Welcome to the Front Porch Podcast, where we have intimate intergenerational conversations to connect, build, and learn from each other. I am Mikkel Brand Oliver, an older millennial, and my lovely co host is Candace, a proud Gen Xer. And on this episode, we're heading to the front porch to talk about writing your family story. Candace, who's joining us on the porch today for this much needed conversation?
So I am so excited about this conversation and to have three wonderful guests with us today, Dr. John Miller, LaTanya Coleman-Carter, and Andrea Martin. Thank you guys for joining us on the front porch today. I'm
Thanks
ready
for
for
having
this
us.
conversation. Ready.
Excited to be here.
Thank you.
So we want to kind of get things started with you all, just telling us a little bit about yourself, what generation you are a part of. How about Latanya? How about you get us started?
Hi, LaTanya Coleman-Carter, and I resonate with Gen X and Millennial. I'm sort of at the end, and it kind of depends sometimes in where when I look it up. I mean, even when I Google it, sometimes it says I'm one and I'm the other. And like I said, I kind of resonate with both of them. So I would say Gen X, Millennial/Millennial.
John.
Yeah, I'm a '70s baby. I'm Gen X all day. Gen X and a little bit of that sandwich generation, in that my wife and I have a toddler. Then we're also, concerned always about our aging parents, right? So Gen X and a little bit of the sandwich generation.
And Andrea.
I like LaTanya. Feel I resonate in both Gen X and Millennial, bits of pieces of both, but oftentimes I look at it like a bridge, like I can help decipher one generation for the other and vice versa. So I like this middle ground.
Good stuff. So, before we dig into this conversation, we start with a rapid fire question. This is kind of like an appetizer. So, once I ask the question, just share the first thing that comes to mind, and we'll start with Andrea. So, imagine your family is a book. What's the title of your family's current chapter?
Mm. Rapid fire. I should not. There for you. Just there for you. We've had so much disruption, people passing away, and sickness, and shifting dynamics with COVID, and we were all just there, really present, and really knew that if we needed something, that our family, both immediate and extended, would show up if they could with masks, but they'd show up for one another.
There for you. Awesome. John, which is the title of your family's current chapter?
It ain't as long as it has been.
Mm.
And a quick little 30-second story about that is, I remember when I was a kid, one of the things I always wanted to do was rush time, right? I was someone who wanted to be 3 steps ahead of whatever the next step was. And I can remember when I was in high school, my mother would sit me down and say, "Baby, it ain't as long as it has been." And that was always like a reminder in terms of when you're in those transition moments, you're closer to where you're going than where you've been, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, certainly with some life transition stuff we got going on right now, it ain't as long as it has been.
Come on, that'll preach right there. Latanya.
Um, I like we're transitioning, so I think I would just go with transcending or transitioning something. It's a really small family, my mother and my brother, and um, I think we're all going through this space where we're moving into new spaces, changing careers. My brother retired, my mother retired. Like we're all just moving into new spaces, and it's been an amazing experience for all of us because they're so different. But the transition is necessary, and I think everyone's moving into purpose as well. So I think transitioning.
Mm. That resonates. Candace, what about you?
Okay, so I had the advantage of thinking about this for a little bit of time, and I still don't have anything that's as profound as what I would like to think. But here's what I have. Fated evolution.
Mm.
It's going to happen. Fate, the divine, however you look at it, something in your life is going to evolve. If you're growing, you're evolving. So maybe that's what it is. If you're growing, you're evolving. I don't know.
Yes.
To that effect.
I love it. Oh, I love it.
What you got?
I was thinking as you all were sharing, I would say fruitful. So my immediate family consists of me and my mom. My dad passed away in 2017 to cancer. And I don't have any children yet, but I have a beautiful goddaughter. But just fruitful as I'm watching my mom grow through sadness and mourning to restore joy, as I'm watching myself grow into my full authentic self and who God has called me to be and stand in that. Life is just blooming and I'm producing good fruit. So I'd say fruitful.
I love that. I love the rapid fire. Always gets me going. All right. So let's kind of get into our conversation. I think one of the things we want to start with, we want to take you back. We want to take you way back. Now, this is way, way back. Although this is not going to be a therapy session on a podcast. However,
it might be
therapy, right? We do want you to just kind of think back a little bit to your childhood or maybe your adolescent years and just think about some of those messages that really resonated with you about what family means, how you internalize what family means. So what were some of those messages?
Anybody? Okay. I had a joke, so I'll go with the quick joke first. And the first message was, what happens in this house stays in this house, boy. Remember that. Okay. All right. But, all jokes aside, I think my family messaging was, it's all about family. And I think that certainly all of my memories about my family are romantic, even though we did without. In hindsight, it's all romantic. So, it's all about family.
That may be the first time I've ever heard someone say that the way, their family, it was romantic. That's an interesting word to use there.
Yeah, and and the reason why I say romantic is because it just much like the best romance novels, it ain't romantic when you're in it, right? It's like, like at the beginning, you look back over time and say we had humble beginnings or we did things like that. But I actually still look back at it now with the romance of, I remember Thursday night, 8:00, everybody getting ready to watch the Cosby Show. I remember that. I remember having those like family, it's Black History Month. So I remember kind of sitting down and as a family, we watched Shaka Zulu. I remember as a family, we sat down and watched Roots. So those things that I look back on now as a man in my mid 40s, yeah, they were very romantic. So, so that's a little bit of behind the scenes on that.
I love that.
I think I would go with another maybe cliche quote that we'd say back then. Blood is thicker than water, and I heard that so much, but it actually, I know that there were times when our family, had whatever its issues was, no matter what, when it came down to it, we were going to be there for each other and we're going to support each other and we're going to be the safe space. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that's resonated with me, especially as a Black woman in America and having to present out into spaces and into the world where I go out there and I'm confronted the moment I walk out of my house, out of my safe space with, so many different obstacles and things, to know that when I get home where my family is, that is my safe space. And I think I love that no matter what happened or what mistakes I made or what thing came between my family and I, it was always really thicker than water and we was going to come through it together.
Yeah, very similarly in terms of like family was first. It was the most important. I mean, I remember like everything surrounded was family. It was, celebrations and traditions and our religion and everything just kind of had family as a through line. And with that came love and respect and support, and actually a lot of messaging around caring for others. Like, this is an open door. Like, we take care of you whether you're blood or not, even, and that's a lot of what my grandmother always had an Edmonds ready to go. Like, that, whoever showed up, it could be the mailman or a neighbor or, somebody from the community, but it was always an open door of like giving back, regardless of how much we had or the family had.
I love that.
Mikhail, how about you? What's some of those messages?
Yeah. The first like external message that came to mind was like, anytime you leave this house, you're representing the family. So you're representing your father and I and everything that we've taught you. So when I was at school, if I misbehaved or made poor choices, it reflected poorly on me, of course, and it reflected poorly on, my parents, right? We raised you better than that. You know better than that, right? So those messages really stuck with me. And internally, it was, you contribute to the family, right? Growing up as an only child, I have 2 half sisters, but it's like a 13-year age gap. It was you contribute to this family, right? Everything isn't just given to you. You have to earn your keep around here. So pitching in, not being selfish, even though they spoiled me rotten. Those were a lot of the family messages that I received. And I mean, there's nothing that you can't do, Mikkel. So a lot of that. Yeah.
I think all of, maybe not all, but a lot of the messages that I received was, your job is to go to school, period.
That one too.
Go to school. Whatever that looks like, you're going. That is your job. And just this idea of hospitality and just service and, giving back to people, making sure folks had enough to eat, making sure people had somewhere to stay, whatever their situation was, we're not judging folk. They need our help. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. So what was the role in your family? Did you all have a role? Did you play a role? Were you peacekeeper? Were you the hellion? Like, what was your role in your family dynamic? And then just to kind of follow up with that, like, how are some of those messages, or maybe even the role that you had in your family, how is that kind of helping you cultivate your own family right now? So what was your role, and then how are you using that role or any of those messages to cultivate your family?
I don't want to keep going first. So I'm okay. So fellow guests, this is my last time going first. All right. So, I was the baby. So as the baby, you get benefits of one. I watched a whole bunch of cut behinds. So I wasn't trying to get mine cut, right? So the benefit of that is you kind of watch and you learn from the wisdom. And we had a unique blended family, but I don't think my family structure was that unique in that my mother and my aunt raised us together. Both of them were products of divorce. We had another auntie who had passed, and so we adopted her children. And so in our family of 7, I was the baby, but I was the baby of one blood sister, and then my cousins who were kind of like my extended family, big brothers, big sister to this day. So I was the baby of much. Oh yeah, and we lived with Big Mama, and Grandma was at the house too, right? So Candace, just like you said, Grandma's house burned down. Grandma came right there and was everybody Big Mama in the house, and I still got the switch bruises to prove it. Okay, Grandma held it down. Now, all of that's to say, as far as like what role that did for me, is that it allowed me to kind of be a helper. And so when I think about what I went on to do with my career, I work as a practicing social worker, social work scholar. And so that whole idea of community, my first community was my family. And so as the youngest person in the family, I was often asked to kind of lead or help or do things, especially because when all of the oldest siblings leave, then you're the last one remaining. And we had some distance in between that. So I kind of had this relationship with my parents where I was like the baby. And then when all my other older siblings had left to go off to college or Job Corps, whatever they ended up doing, it was more of a roommate. So they were teaching me how to cook recipes and stuff because I needed to have something cooked when they got home from work. So all of those were little parts of just a helping spirit, a community spirit, and certainly that still drives me to this day. So that's my story in terms of the family.
I bet y'all ate good in your house.
Facts.
I
Yo,
bet y'all ate good in your house. Big mama,
we
your
still
mama, auntie.
we still trying to hold down some of those recipes. I be trying to feed my kids some stuff. They be like, "Why are you feeding me this?" I'm like, "You don't know. It's for the ancestors. Just so you know." Like I'm trying to keep some of them recipes alive to this day. But no, it was great. Real quick, my family grew up, as you all may have heard, there wasn't fathers involved, right? So one of the benefits of that, and I'll use the word benefit in air quotes here for the purpose of this conversation, is that my parents always taught me, look, you don't have to need a woman. So let me make sure that you have what you need. So in terms of teaching me how to cook, teaching me how to quote unquote take care of myself, that's another cultural nuance thing that I think is a part of our Gen X. Again, I can't speak for Gen X solely here, right? Some of this may be Gen X, some of this might just be sugary, sweet, Southern, Southeastern. I don't know where that comes from, but a whole lot of that in terms of, I don't want to say training me to be the man they wish they had, because that's too strong. But a lot of it was certainly making sure I knew how to take care of my business, take care of my family. So a lot of those things were just like value systems that were brought into my life early that I certainly appreciate to this day.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Absolutely. LaTanya or Andrea?
Go ahead. I was on the, I think, positive side of the term, a caregiver, connector, like a mediator, making sure everyone's sort of attended to, but on the negative, more negative through line, it was a people pleaser and a rule follower. And there was a lot of praise, right, around being able to be a people pleaser and a rule follower. Like, people loved it, and I didn't cause trouble and I didn't make waves. And so, Candace, to the second question, like, what has come through that I keep of that is trying to keep those positive parts and trying to be a little bit less of those other parts. Like, I don't have to stay in that people pleasing. I don't have to stay in that rule follower, because not all rules are right. And there needs to be a critical thought. And I don't know, John, I think you had said it, like, there's certain stuff that was under the, pushed under the rug, and we didn't talk about it back then. And now that stuff we, really need to bring up or talk about, and it's not easy, but I appreciate having the difficult conversations now that I didn't have when I was a kid.
That's rich.
It's so interesting, the overlap, because I'm honestly just sitting right here going, yep, me too. It was a really small family, just my brother and my dad left when I was like 5. So my mom became a single mom, and I was the oldest. So I think my role, I tried to step up in some kind of weird mom way, and my brother still resents me for it to this day, to be honest. I apologize profusely all the time. I hate that I became whatever that was, or why I thought I needed to be that. I was very much a people pleaser, especially when it came to like education. I became really smart because I also wanted that from school. I wanted she's so smart, the smart girl, that, all of any kind of way I could get that, I was trying. And I think that all of those things do actually transition into the space as a mom now. And a lot of what I got also from my mom was like, you don't need a man, like you said, like, and so I learned a lot about keeping my gas tank full and how to change a tire, and, all these things that I now found out after years of therapy are also sort of hindering me now, because I've gotten such a wall built up that it's creating this other thing that's happening for me that I do not want to give to my children. And so I am now hyper focused on those things and trying so hard not to pass that down. that I've become this like extremely free parent that's like, I'm not going to tell you how to do anything. I'll just be here to support you. And so I don't know, for me, I'm trying to find the happy medium between not being too much, being a supportive person that's just here if you need me. But I have experiences too, but I don't want to force them down. Like, I realized that part of what she was trying to do, and I love her. My mother is probably my favorite person in the whole entire world. So I'm not talking about her in any kind of, like, I love her. I know she did the best she could with the information she had at the time. But I know that those things, I am aware she was trying to protect me. And while I'm still now having to figure out how to shed some of those things and to be the best version of myself for what I need, I know that she was just, she was protecting me. I don't know. I appreciate what she did. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And you said it right. There's so much overlap, I think, in many of you all's answers, and everything that you all were saying just kind of resonates with me. I think, I'm an only child. So, whatever assumptions that come with being an only child, you're spoiled and all that. Yes, yes, I was. I will own that. Okay. But then also just having, family, and then really more friends who really ended up being probably closer to me than some of my own family members, and just building that into how I cultivate relationships now, and my family, that kind of stuff. I mean, I think those things really, really stayed with me because I had to do that. I mean, it was those folks. And then, I thought I wanted to be Dr. Doolittle when I was little. So I had a lot of animals growing up. Yeah. Lots and lots of animals. And so, but that was just something that I think my parents just kind of allowed to happen because they wanted me to have that experience. And then just being the only child, I think there was maybe a little bit of guilt around, oh, you don't have anybody else. But I was okay with it because I didn't know anything different. Right. I mean, it was okay. It was like me and the dogs and the rabbits and the whatever and the friends.
Mm-hmm.
That still resonates because it's family. It's family for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamel Hill has this quote that is super powerful, and she says, childhood lasts forever. Childhood isn't just like a period of time that, we go through and then just like leave as we go through adolescence and adulthood. That those foundational years and lived experiences, they stay with us forever. That's why if anyone in therapy, I'm in therapy now, LaTanya, you mentioned it, everything circles back. Everything circles back. Now I'm talking about stuff in second grade. I'm like, I'm still wearing that stuff at 40. So childhood is forever. Along that vein, right? Have either all of you, have you ever experienced being tokenized in your family or ostracized for any particular reason, or have you witnessed someone in your family be tokenized or othered? And if so, what was that like? And how do you believe that still shows up for you as you navigate life?
I'm going to go back to the education part. I was absolutely that person. I was the tokenized. I was destined to be the first to graduate college and destined to be this person. And it was a lot of pressure at some point. I realized that I brought that on myself, though. I got into math, and it became like I was a unicorn. I was a Black girl from the South that loved math, and it was just not normal. And then that just catapulted me into this space of like, you're going to be great, Black woman in STEM. And then it just made me have to be something that ultimately, I still love math. I will nerd out on math all day long. I don't know. I wonder sometimes, however, what would I have been like had I not gone so deep down that rabbit hole of performing for everybody to be this person they've created now. I so I don't know. I mean, I think the question is, I was tokenized for that reason. I kind of resent that I took on that role, because I think, like I said, I think I actually created it, and then they all was like, yeah, let's do that, pick her, let's go with that one, and then I just had this pressure to like get the degrees, and then now I got more degrees than a thermometer. I ain't doing that, so it's just like I have all this stuff that came from this great role that was created, and here I am, kind of shedding some of those things and becoming my true authentic self after all of that.
Yeah. So powerful. Andrea, I saw you like nodding with some resonance when LaTanya was sharing.
Yeah, I think so the questions was interesting. It really gave me a lot of to think about, because I'm not sure other people did it, but I know I created my own standards and metrics along the way. Once that, like, getting good grades, came with praise, or getting, good compliments around, dancing, or whatever I did, it was like I created a standard of perfectionism too. I actually really, I think my parents, from being one girl with three brothers, like, you'd think I would be super tokenized or ostracized in a very gendered way back in the 80s. And it really wasn't. Like, certain things were, I wore the dresses, and I danced, but if I wanted to do anything, my parents were all for it. If I wanted to, go with academics over, whatever. And I think that was really cool, because my family were all very different. My brother is in computer and electronics, and two of my brothers are more, sports, and they were always supportive whatever we did. So it was kind of a blessing. But I've seen it, and those standards to be put on others are really hard to break, and they're even hard to break when they come from yourself.
So true.
Yeah.
For me, I'd say I don't really think I had a lot of family tokenism, in terms of feeling anything. I think if anything, it was more about maybe community. But again, I grew up on a dirt road in Monk's Corner, South Carolina. So the family wasn't just limited to my house. So truly, I guess as a Gen Xer, I grew up in a neighborhood to where if I did something bad down my street, when I got home, that was the third beating I got. The first two I got was from somebody, auntie, cousin, whoever else, before they called home and say, this is why I spanked him, before I even got home, right? So for me, a lot of it was really more so about, in our particular neighborhood and community, there were just not a lot of positive reflections of what Black men were doing in terms of what it would look like. And so I think that kind of free range of no one getting in the way, a lot of it was because we had women who were raising me and my other male cousins, not without a guide, but without an expectation. So if we wanted to do sports was cool. Like, I played high school football, wrestling, all that stuff. We did good. It was fun. But when it was time for me to kind of go from that childhood identity to my adult identity, I think a lot of it was really a matter of families just kind of watching, being a part of the generation to be the first. So when people talk about first gen, some of the first gen things are, you're an astronaut, or you're just kind of like, you're out of this world, because where the steps you're taking are things that are going to be so far removed from what your family may be doing. At least that was in my case, that I didn't really feel tokenized. I just kind of felt like at a certain point, I had a fan club of family who would always be watching, and I could feel their support, real or imaginary, from far away. And so for me, that's kind of been my experience. And so I hope I answered the question, but didn't really have so much tokenizing. It was more so of, I think, we don't know what to expect. We know what we don't want you to do, but we cannot necessarily tell you what it is we want for you, because some of it was, unseen.
So was it kind of almost felt like a bit of a ceiling for family, like they've taken you as far as you can go, or as far as they could go, and then after that it was like, okay, hopefully you can get on out there and figure it out.
So some of that, Candace, although it's funny, because I'm going to join on what one of my colleagues said here on the chat today, which is, my family gave me what they could, but what they gave me was so valuable because they gave me crazy confidence. When I say crazy confidence, I should not be talking to you today as an academic dean in Green Bay, Wisconsin, growing up on a dirt road in Monk's Corner, South Carolina. That should not happen, right? But my family's crazy confident was like, baby, you could do whatever. Hard stop, even if we haven't seen it before, we know you. So as I began to grow up and get to those kind of difficult watershed moments we all go through where you decide what type of person you want to be in this world, I think I always had that voice in the back of my head from my family, nuclear family, family beyond nuclear family, and community family. Like, nah, you the one, you one of ours. You can do whatever you want, and we know we've put that in there for you. So again, it's that kind of crazy confidence that sometimes when you're in spaces when people don't understand just how not far removed many African Americans are from slavery, that kind of reminder that my grandmother was born in 1914, and so we know what her mother before her was doing. That was always a line in my family, and so it was really that kind of, you better go to school, you better do as good as you can. Do you not know the cost that was paid for you to
Yeah.
do well? And so it wasn't a pressure, but it was almost this kind of like, we don't know how far you're going, but you better go and go as far as you can, do as much as you can, and we'll be there to support you. So it was confidence. The confidence was incredible.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. The family
I think I
input.
want to add that I want to make sure that I don't know necessarily how I came across in terms of I was trying to answer the question one. Um, I don't know that it was pressure that I felt. I think I want to be very clear that I felt very much supported. Again, I started that journey, and it was more one of those things. Once I got on it, they was like, "Oh, okay, you the one. We're gonna," and it was more of a like holding me up and lifting me and taking me there and allowing me, putting me in the programs. And my mother was very much one of those people who was like, "Okay, you need to be at this school. You need to be doing this thing." And so it was very much support, tokenism, yes, but it wasn't like just the pressure. It was very much supported and loving experience, too. So I just want to make sure that it was like my mother's listening, or I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know this felt like that. Like, no, that's not it. Yeah.
All love. It's all
Yeah.
love. It's all good.
Mama, we love you. Yeah. LaTanya, your sharing actually really resonated with me as I was thinking about this question really just now, and realizing how I othered myself in my family. My mom is the baby of 6. So I have a lot of cousins, a lot of female cousins at that. And my older cousins, they had their name in the family, as everything connects back to grandma and how grandma saw the grandkids. So I have a cousin who's in the military, and I was like, that's grandma's favorite. She's the oldest, she's responsible, she's in the military. Then her sister is a favorite because she's so creative and stylish. Then my other cousin, and I was like, well, what's my role? And I was like, you know what? Education. I've superseded the level of education they got to because I have a college degree. And when I gave grandma a copy of my degree and she put that thing in a frame, and that thing was on that coffee table in the living room, I said, okay, none of y'all have a degree. So I othered myself as a way to like, what's my fit with grandma? And I'm literally just realizing that as just sharing and thinking about this question, and so many missed opportunities to share some of what I've learned, not to be a tutor for my cousins, but just to share different experiences, to encourage them, to edify them in their journeys, was a missed opportunity. But thankfully, my family, as I've matured and as I've grown, especially spiritually, they see me as a go-to, and they'll send their children to me. Call Mikkel and let Mikkel help you figure that out. Or Mikkel, should I let her go on a cruise? Like they by herself, like they respect my opinion. But some of that othering I did as a way to just get my footing and to be seen by grandma. Wow. That felt like therapy. Mm-hmm. So what traditions or values or approaches have you all carried into your family, and how do they shape the story of your family? Like LaTanya, you said you're like this free parent and you're trying to like find that middle ground of like explore, let life teach you as mommy guides you along the way.
Yeah, and that is pretty much the existence of my household, and I'm actually really proud of that now. So my oldest child is 24, and my youngest is 9. And so when I started this journey, I pretty much grew up with my oldest. I mean, I was really figuring things out, learning how to be a mom, learning how to be a human, an adult, and all the things at the same time. And so I wasn't always the parent that I am now. So I'll say that first. I did just kind of initially just become what I felt my mother was giving. And I don't know. And I say it that way because I realized that there was parts of what I felt wasn't necessarily her intention or how her impact was intended to be. And so once I got to really step back and understand her purpose and what she was trying to do and the information that I mean, she literally didn't have Google and all the things that we have access to that actually feed into our ability to be a different type of parent. And she had just the information. And I mean, we're from a small town. I mean, she's from Forest City, Arkansas, where she literally picked cotton. And so like, I'm thinking about the information that she had and the knowledge that she had to be a parent, you know. And then I took those things and just went straight into parenting just like her. And it wasn't until I started having there are 4 kids that I birthed all together, but I have a blended family of 7 children. And so it wasn't until we started really trying to blend all these things that I started discovering that this isn't working, you know. So as much as there's traditions that I think my mother has, that we had as a family, um, it's really hard to keep some of the like parenting style traditions. I mean, we have traditions like, yes, we do Christmas and we have a Christmas tree, you know, those types of traditions. But when it comes to how I parent, I really can't parent like my mom parented. I mean, there literally wasn't Instagram, and my 9-year old has a cell phone, and you know, so that the things that my mother did for me or with me, I just don't really work if I really think about it. And even when I did try, I mean, my 17-year-old probably has the worst stories of me as a mom because I was still trying to push those agendas at the time. And this is when it really started to fall apart too, realizing that they weren't working. And it was this moment of like, if I take the same information and use it in a different space and it's not working, who is it serving? And it just wasn't. So I had to, and it was hard because then you're thinking, again, you know, and I'll go back and go, I'm sorry, mom, I'm not saying you did it wrong. You know, I feel this certain level of like apologizing or like I'm saying something bad about what she did. And it's just not that. It's just that times have changed and I have to change with the times.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of parenting traditions I've taken, I don't think. She was no, you know what, she was always like for supportive again, like so she was supportive and she would help me find the school I needed to be in and make sure I was in the right programs, and I was a Girl Scouts and I danced and I did all these things. So I think I have that aspect of it. And she didn't force us to do anything, which is part of my freedom. I let them do. I really am. I say a lot of times, and I think Candace has read the book. I say things like, I am just here as like I'm a coach in the sense of the fact that like I'm available. I'm not trying to teach you anything. And I started my kids will probably say, she always say, well, here's the information. Do with it what you please, and I'll be here to support whatever decision you make. And so I try to do it that way so that I don't have, so that they're not shedding what I gave them. It's they're becoming their authentic selves from the beginning is my hope.
So powerful. John, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll try to answer. Sunday dinner. We still try to have Sunday dinner at my house. Now I say try because it ain't quite the same. Like that is what I was saying earlier about the whole romantic thing. My romantic memory of like literally 0 through 18 is some version of Sunday school at 9:30. Church starts somewhere between 10:30, 11 o'clock. Get home 1-ish. If it was an after church program, 2-ish. Food was already ready when you got home, right? Like that level of this is like Soul Food, the movie. Like that literally was, when I talk about that romantic upbringing, that was our home almost every Sunday. And so over the course of the past, hard to believe, I got 18 years in the game on the faculty side, right? So 18 years in the game, all of these different places we've lived, we've sacrificed some of those traditions because we just don't have the same community, right? So trying to recreate soul food Sundays in Northeast Wisconsin, yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge, right? Just keeping it real. No disrespect to my folks out here in Green Bay, but that idea of literally intentionally, I probably make 80% of our Sunday dinners, and 80% of those dinners have the same theme: a green, like collards or whatever, some rice, because I grew up in the Low Country and rice was an important dietary staple. And so my kids eat a lot of rice because every meal we ate with rice as a kid. So we can afford to give them different things, but I still feed my kids copious, unhealthy amounts of rice, in part to give them a part of their daddy's childhood. So greens, some rice, some mac and cheese, and a meat. Whatever that meat is, it can change from Sunday to Sunday, but some version of that meal is replicated in my house a significant amount of the time during the year. And having this kind of reflective conversation about it, where does that come from? I think that comes from trying to bring tradition to young people who clearly would not even know anything about that tradition unless I was intentional about trying to get it to them. So certainly try to bring those kind of traditions in. And as far as parenting styles go, my parents it was non-traditional. I was raised by my mom and aunts. And so, we're trying to do a nuclear family thing, to do that thing for our family with my wife and I. And so, so many different things in terms of we didn't have to unlearn. We just had to realize we didn't really know what the hell we were doing. And we didn't necessarily had a guide, except for a lot of the godly counsel and a lot of great people who are around us, who are kind of part of our village. As a then young married couple, we celebrate our 15th anniversary next month, right? So time flies. So grateful for all of those things that I say proudly, but all of that is due in part to tradition. Like we had to make some tradition. We could lean off some of the traditions that we had, but then we also kind of realized that both of us came from single parent homes, quote unquote, where we didn't necessarily have some experiences. And so we try to make it our own. What are all these Miller family traditions that we do?
I love it.
Oh, I love hearing everybody's stories and backgrounds. So some of the traditions or values that kind of have pulled through are one that is family is not easily discarded. There's so many distractions. There's so much going on in the world that I think sometimes my boys are like, why do we have to have dinner together? Like, can't we go sit in front of the TV and watch? And I'm like, no, we're going to talk to each other. We're going to, get to know each other. We're going to, do rosebud thorn. So I hear both your good parts of your day, what you're working on, what you're struggling with. Keeping that piece. And I think, the really focusing on spending time with one another is super valuable. Another tradition is that I think that caring and kindness, like that wanting to, really be good and not take it for granted, be good for the world, is so important. I remember distinctly growing up and like if we were bullied at school, come home and tell mom and dad, and my mom would always say like she'd be caring of us and our emotions and like taking time to listen, but at the end she'd always say like, and I just want you to know you don't know what that person's going through, so don't judge them too harshly. And that was like a huge piece, like that we, carry into our family and our traditions, is saying like it's kindness first. Like I say, to be cool is to be kind to my kids, because I want them to know like that how you show up for others is the most important, and that freedom to do that without judging, even if you're on the receiving end of the hurt, is super valuable. So that one's really carried through that I'm proud of.
Yeah, we could remind a lot of adults it's cool to be kind.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. What about you, Candace?
I was just sitting here thinking, Okay, so one tradition that has absolutely carried through generations of my family. You do not, I'm going to say it in the way that it was said to me. You don't walk out of the house looking crazy.
Yes.
You know, you do not walk out of this house looking crazy. Your clothes need to be ironed. You need to be pulled together. Listen, don't
Yeah,
do it. That
yeah.
is absolutely carried through without a doubt in good ways and bad. You know, sometimes folk go into debt trying to keep themselves looking like whatever as they leave the house. And then sometimes you're like, you know what? Those same pair of shoes cost $25 as opposed to $199. And I'll get those. Right. Because I got some other stuff to do. But that that is something for sure. And I think just this idea of caring for other people.
Mm,
Um, and caring about what happens to other people.
mm,
That's definitely something that is just that's all in oh man, that's so a part of my family and a part of just what I've learned and um having seen so many models in my family of women and men and just the groups and how we come together collectively to really take care of each other and making sure that if somebody needs you, you're there for them. Whatever that looks like. You know, it could be somebody you haven't talked to in 3 years, and they'll call you and say, "I need somewhere to stay." Okay, come on. You know,
mhm.
that's just how that's something that I really appreciate about like the tradition in my family. But that don't leave the house crazy stuff. That's real. That's real.
Mhm.
That's so funny to me because I remember when I let go of so many traditions, right? And my kids will leave the house looking crazy, and I let them these days. But what's funny is I can feel it in my soul, like I can hear my grandmother living rent free inside my
Mhm.
head, being like, "Your child, what is you letting that child leave the house like that?" And I'm like, "Baby, because." We got so many other bigger concerns to be worried about. If I focus so heavily on what they got on right now, baby, we're gonna be stuck. But when you said that, I was like, oh my God, like it was a real
Mhm.
struggle for me because when I first had to accept that it was okay for them to present however they wanted to and that they didn't have no reflection on me, that was a big
Mm,
deal for me because I thought that the way they went out into the world was a representation of me and I was protecting my image and my thing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's them. That ain't got nothing to do with me, you know? And so for
Yeah, but they
me,
show up.
I resonate with what you're saying because that's how I grew up. But I have
Yeah.
given girl, I let that go. I was gone. I was outside.
mm.
I've let
LaTanya,
it go. I've let it go. I've let it go only in this way, because it drives my mother crazy. I do not iron clothes. Not a thing.
oh,
I'm not ironing anything. Not nothing. I don't care how wrinkled. I'll put it on wrinkled.
A dryer with a damp cloth, 10 minutes, good
That's
to go.
fine. I'm going to walk all of the wrinkles out. It's fine.
oh,
And it drives her nuts. Like, I
mhm.
can't believe that you are leaving the house with those wrinkled clothes on. And like, and they are on my body, on my 47-year-old body, so they can go wherever I go.
I can't. I can't. LaTanya, could you share before for any parents that are listening, right? Because what you said reminds me of the message I got from my family, right? When you leave out this house, you represent us, right? And feeling the level of disappointment when I did something and my parents and how that reflects on them. They gonna think we don't not teaching you anything. Can you share for parents listening one switch of the mindset or one action to help parents move from possibly keeping their children in bondage because everything you do, how you look, how you present to the world is going to be a reflection on me. And I'm possibly more concerned with my status than I am about your liberation and your development and who you are. Can you share something that you've tried or a mindset that you've adopted?
I think I'm going to say that the mindset really was a shift in myself because when I had to let go of those ideas for myself before I could let that be someone else's truth. So I was living in a space where everything we're talking about was how I existed, right? So it mattered to me how I looked, it mattered to me what people thought, it mattered to me. And again, I will say probably the biggest move for me was when I realized that the pressures of everything else that my kids are going through, and in the age that we live in where they have social media bullying, bullying at school, bullying, there's so many things that we're really dealing with, that taking this one thing, what she has on, and making it another big thing she has to deal with, was
Mm,
causing this major friction between her and I. And I'm talking about my middle child. We had a really butting heads kind of relationship, and I didn't want that, and I kept looking for ways to release some of that pressure. And so it came by way of like letting go of some of the smaller things and choosing my battles, so to speak. And so that was just one of them. It was just like, and she's an amazing person. She has like the best, biggest personality, and she dresses extremely wild, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things about her. But I was trying to suppress that, and I would have her go back in and make it match, or things like that. And but that was a fight that I now had to have with her. That was just not necessary. It didn't hurt her. So this is kind of the way I would rationalize it. Is it hurting her?
mhm,
Is it hurting someone else? And if
mm,
those were not happening, I was like, well, wear the ponytail with the stripes and the polka dot. It's not changing anyone's life except for
mhm,
hers in the best way. And so when
mm,
I started kind of doing everything like that. It was just like one of those moments where I was like, is it hurting them? Is it hurting me? Is it hurting someone else? And if the answer to that is just no, I'm just like, go ahead then, you know.
mhm,
And it just helped. I mean, we are really good friends now, believe it or not. She's 17, almost 18 now, but we struggled so hard in the beginning because she wasn't a people pleaser, and my oldest was a people pleaser, and so it was easy to just tell her what to do. She did it. She didn't want to get in trouble. This one, she didn't care. Trouble who? She was like, and I've literally asked her, like, why did you do that? Didn't you know you was gonna get in trouble? She's like, yeah, I wanted to. I was just trying to see. And so that was what I was fighting against. And so it
yeah,
was like I had that personality, and I'm gonna try to tell her what to wear. So I'm like, I have to decide: is she gonna get in trouble for pressing the red button on the subway train, or wearing the red bow with the pink shoes? So it
mhm,
just became. I really had to start nitpicking at the things I was battling over. So I would just
mm,
ask those questions. I think, yeah. And
yeah,
it's different for each child. I mean, I have so many kids and they're so different. And I
mhm,
really have become like a completely different mom for each one of them. So that's part of it too. And really getting to know that child, I think, and deciding what's important for them to become their authentic self. And that's different.
thank you. You just helped somebody. Thank you. Mhm,
Can you guys talk a little bit about just how you've seen the whole definition of family change, and just those ideas, those norms, those values, what that's been like for you as you created your own kind of legacies, or has it even influenced the legacies that you're wanting to create within your own family?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. I mentioned it earlier in one of my answers, but I think that distance and the ability to travel has when I talk about romance, romance has a little bit of lost in it too, right? Like it's a little bit of
Mm,
melancholy within the romance in terms of because I'm longing for a thing that I know may never come back again, right? So right now we're raising Arkansan, South Carolinian, Wisconsinites, right? In terms of our kids who are born in Arkansas, one born in South Carolina. We're raising them in Northeast Wisconsin with two parents who were born and bred 100% South Kakalaka, right? Like my wife and I are 100% South Carolinians. Like that's who we are. And so that embodies so much of what we want for tradition, what we want for quote unquote Black excellence. What do we want our children to look like? And we don't take those roles lightly. So again, the whole family distance thing is something that I think our generation, so again, I'll go back to the Gen X thing. We are perhaps the first generation to have such access to leave. And so in terms of I know that I
mm,
carry a burden with me. Even when I was in Arkansas, I had a little bit of a burden in my heart that I was somehow fleeing South Carolina. So my purpose was not just a purpose for my individual pursuits, but my purpose was for my community, and my community included my family. So even when I now do certain things that I think I'm now trying to give back, I try to give back as an aspirational figure. Or sometimes I give back literally hitting people up on Cash App back home, right? But there's still that kind of longing to be close to family, even though we have distance now, great distance between family. So again, to me, that is one of the challenges of defining family in 2023, because you have a lot of us who, many times people go to school like within a 70-mile radius. That's in my world right now in terms of how we do our recruitment of students. But when you find people who are far outside of that, so I'm hearing stories from Forest City, Arkansas, all the way out to LA, right? There's a lot of distance between Forest City and LA. And so those are things that I don't know if families had to wrestle with that the same way we have to wrestle with that, say, several generations ago. So for what it's worth.
You guys want to jump in on that one?
I think that now families not in our society is not so defined by blood as it used to be. I think being able to, create your own family and those who resonate with you is a beautiful thing. I think the definition of family, that what happens here stays here, and we don't talk about some of the difficult stuff that's going on, has shifted. I really love the shift in conversation and openness and mindset changes that people are willing to make, even if that's not how they grew up. So it's a cool thing to see a lot of the what I remember as norms no longer being norms, for what we're talking about, like entire concepts that we're talking about now weren't discussed at all, way back when. So
I guess the only other thing I would add is I really do like the aspect of being able to just kind of do it how you feel is necessary for your family, and creating your own definition of family, like kind of like what you were saying, Andrea. And I think that helps in the terms of making it a little bit of a lighter space to be in, because sometimes, I mean, some people's families are really heavy, and it comes from a lot of tradition and ideals that we've been passing down for years. And so this sort of idea of being open to accepting people for who they are and for what they want to be and things like that, I think are shifts in the norms that I appreciate a lot, because I think the more I sit with it, the more I realize I became a product of norms and a product of traditions and ideas that maybe I didn't necessarily want to be. And I think this letting go of those norms are going to be great for our future society. I mean, these kids, if they're in these families that have those as ideas, I think good for them. And I can't wait to see how it all turns out, to be honest.
It's so interesting because when we were, prepping for the show, both Mikkel and I were saying, we really want to kind of hear what our guests have to say about how just society is kind of informing the way in which we think about family now, or how we're thinking about family structures or family dynamics, and well, who's a part of your family? How are you defining this now? And so I think it's always interesting to hear all of the different ways in which we think about family that is not kind of that traditional nucleus, that we idealize maybe growing up, and that family, it truly is what you make and how you and who you want to be a part of your family. And even though sometimes family, we think about family as, okay, these are folks who are our blood relatives, that does not mean that they are part of your immediate surroundings and you're with them every day and hanging out with them. And maybe they're not their family, yes, but they are not as close as some of the other folks that you have asked and that you have welcomed into your life to be a part of your family. So I think it's really interesting how we're thinking differently about family dynamics and family structures.
Can I just, if I may,
Yeah,
for just a
sure.
second, I want to share a quick story about family in terms of a part we had our conversation hasn't really gone there, but I think, Candace, based off what you just said, I want to bring this point home. I wasn't really connected to my paternal family. Like I said, my father wasn't really in the picture, but his mother, my grandma, was an OG, right? So grandma took care of making sure I had that connection, even though it wasn't the same kind of natural connection it would have been if her son, my dad, would have been in the picture.
Mhm,
Fast forward the clock all these years later, and when I get my now young children with my Miller family, they can feel family, even though we're not naturally connected to that family. And so, in
mhm,
all of the conversations about, clearly there is there is a lot to be said about redefining family. But let me be the old country man here and just say the energy when you are with family is that type of energy that I cannot even put into words. Because when I
mhm,
saw this past summer, we had a gathering in honor of my grandmother who passed away a couple years ago. So we now do like an annual family gathering on my father's side. And at this gathering, we have, people come from all over the country. Last year we were in St. Louis. So they're in St. Louis. This was their first time because it's in COVID. Many of my Miller family had not even met the baby boy who was born right before COVID. And when I say it was hand to a glove, as far
Mhm.
as like how the kids played, that energy was different energy, and it's nothing we could have done to replicate that energy.
mhm,
Nothing we could have done here in Northeast Wisconsin. Nothing that we could have done even in our time in Columbia before that stop, or even in Little Rock before that stop. There was just something about that part of the family getting together, kind of like at the ending scene of Medea's family reunion, everybody doing the damn electric slide, going out the end of the movie, right? It's just something about that,
yeah.
right? So again, man, I'm turning into an old man before I'm looking at myself as an old man. But I am just saying I now have a greater appreciation for that, because there's nothing I could have done or could do ever to replicate that thing I'm describing. And so,
Mhm,
certainly, I think, again, given where we are in our different generations in terms of what this looks like moving forward, that's a strength. And so, how do we take the advantages and the benefits of what this thing looks like moving forward, while also not losing some of that community strength that comes together when you have those opportunities to connect? So
Yeah.
again, it's complicated. So I'm sorry, forgive me for
No
getting.
apologies.
I didn't want to get into the run of show there, but just really wanted to mention that because
no, yeah,
I felt it in a real way recently.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any proposed suggestions for how we do that?
I would say lean in, and I'm saying it from someone who has
Mhm.
to lean in to where sometimes things are awkward. So I'm like my paternal grandmother's oldest grand. I think of like 25 grandchildren, which means that I feel a responsibility to connect my children to to their family. Like
Mhm,
I feel a responsibility to make sure that they have an opportunity to meet all the family they can possible, whether they end up having feature roles in their lives or the role of an extra. My job as dad is to provide them with, I don't want to be on my deathbed one day, hopefully 20, 30, 40 years from now. Got a lot of living to do, pray, hopefully, right? But I don't want to be on my deathbed one day and my son say, Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about blank? And so for me, in terms of feeling that responsibility, and again, I'm speaking as someone who has literally been on the move. And so we've kind of gotten to the point now to where we say, this career thing is good and all, but we're about to get to that point to where it's like, we're going to stop. We're going to
Mhm.
love where we at or we're going to die because we're not moving anymore because our kids are not in the damn military. Why are we moving so much? And
Mhm.
so those things all speak to community,
Mhm.
family,
mhm,
connections. This was the first year, and we can remember that we didn't take our now 11-year-old did not step foot on ground in South Carolina in 2022. And he had a strong homesickness that came over him at the beginning of this year. And we think it's because it was something about his rhythm that he knew for whatever
mhm,
reason, even though we flew people up, we did all kind of other trips, he did not step foot on South Carolina soil last year. And it affected him in some way. So
Mhm.
again, all of these are just, sorry, I wish I had the answer, Mikhail. I don't really have the answer here, but I
Mhm.
think we have
It's
to lean.
me. Mhm.
You gotta lean in. I think that leaning in means, people have we all do. We have church hurt, we got family hurt. Like
Mhm.
these are real legit things that at a certain point, that power, I think those are things that our ancestors knew in many ways better than we'll ever know. That power of that kind of, you have to have that at least connection, because what you lose without that connection is something that is, sometimes we feel it, and I'm speaking from experience and just saying that I definitely can feel the distance, and so we definitely have already made a point to try to do whatever we can to close that distance moving forward. So I would just say I would encourage any listener that leaning in matters, especially when you think about the whole story of your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd add to that. My grandmother passed away almost 2 years ago now, and she was such a core to my mother's side of the family. She had 7 kids, so I have a lot. I have 25 first cousins, many other great or additional cousins from their families. And I happened to hear the quote from Matthew McConaughey after his dad passed away: less impressed, now it's time to show up, or something to that effect. It's like, I was, in awe of her and how she connected the family, but rather than staying in that awe, now it's time for me to really get into it. And I always was a connector with the family, but I think even stepping that up, to your point, John, because otherwise it can quickly dissipate if you don't.
Yeah, I think, and I'm probably, now that I'm realizing how far away I've moved from like my core family in Arkansas, it's sort of my position as one of the people, because our base is in Arkansas, I think it's sort of important for us to go back to the center. And so it's not like everybody's job to come and see me or whatever the case. And so I think having like a one event, and I think one event, especially because everyone's really busy and life takes its, directions. But if we said, like, for my family, we recently realized my grandmother passed a really long time ago, and our family stopped getting together and everyone went their separate ways, and we never even talked about it. And we accidentally got together 3 4th of Julys ago. I happened to come home and everyone just came to see me, and we were all there together. And it was like John's experience, and we just felt, it was almost like my grandmother was there in her spirit or something, and everyone had this like moment where we were just connected so deeply that we decided we were going to call it Mayfia's Day, which is my grandmother's name. And we're not going to, but 4th of July works for everyone because they're off work, and it just created this space. So we go to celebrate every year. It's been 3 years now, and it is an amazing time. I completely agree with you, John, and everyone knows that date. It stays the same, and we know we're all planning it the year before. We, you know what I mean? And I think when you have something like that, it could answer your question as to how do you make that happen. Maybe setting a day that never changes and that makes it easy for people to travel because it's already a holiday or something like that. And then everyone just knowing that this is where we're going to be. Show up if you want to feel that energy. You remember what that felt like. Everybody come through. Let's go. I feel like that was, yeah.
I'm coming for a plate. I'm coming for a plate. All right, can a brother get a plate? I'm coming for a plate.
Come get a plate. Listen,
okay, all right.
Also, no, for real. No, you're joking, but it's Arkansas. So everybody really fair. At the end of the day, you can pull up. You can pull up. My mother and every people who ain't family at this point, because now it's been 3 years and it's a whole celebration, but you still get that vibe, of the core family being there. So, I mean, that might help. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. I
A
love
lot of
it.
intentionality, like really just being intentional about how you bring your family together. Because I think I hear all of you saying, like, there's something about each of you, or there's something about someone in your family that is that connector. And so it's like, if the connector is gone, does somebody step into that place, or do multiple people step into that space? Because I hear you guys in that. I feel like there were multiple people who stepped into the place or into that space when my grandmother passed. So it's like, okay, everybody's got a little piece to do. So we all like bring your little piece, whatever that is. Like you cook the greens, you bring the plates and the forks, because we don't want none of your potato salad. Like everybody's got a little something that they need to bring to the party to keep it all connected.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so beautiful, right? So that we don't just congregate when it's funeral time, right? And when
Yeah.
someone dies, and I'm thinking about the listeners who are saying like, yeah, that sounds good, but there's a lot of hurt in my family. Like I haven't spoken to so-and-so in so long. We brushed something up under the rug that we've never talked about. So I can't even imagine coming together with family. But what I hope these last 3 to 4 years have shown us is that life is fleeting, but life is beautiful. So come together, even with the hurt, even if you do it with a small group of those who are willing to come together, feel the love and just begin the healing process. Come together and do it anyway. So this has been nourishing, honey. Um, with the time we have left, let me throw this question out here. What are you all most proud of when it comes to your family?
May I? I wanted to ask earlier. Can I show y'all my family? Can I do a screen share?
Yeah, of course.
I see.
Oh,
I
I
see.
did.
I get the
Wait, you
present button. I'll try.
Try
If
it.
if it doesn't work, let
yeah.
me. Let me share my screen. I don't got nothing to hide. The stuff I got to hide is not on the front of the screen anyway. Okay. All right. I don't really get into all of the tabs. I just share the whole screen. All right. Hold on a second. Share that screen, the entire screen, and I want to share my system audio. No problem.
Let me take this
Share.
poll.
Okay. Got it. It's going to let me. All
Okay.
right. And so it's giving me a warning. Give me 1 second here. I want to share this with you all.
Mhm.
Can you all see my screen? Can you see that?
Um,
Oh, here it is.
um,
Yep.
you added.
Yeah.
Can you all see the picture?
Yes, look at the froze.
Okay. All right. So
Oh my goodness.
So I've been talking a lot about my family, right? So again, my wife and my kids, they're my nuclear family now, but this my family, this Monk's Corner's finest right here, circa 1983. Okay, after the church picture.
Oh,
Everybody had it right, okay? And I'm little man over there in the corner, and that's my cousin Carolyn, that's my baby cousin Shawan, that's Big Mama, that's Grandma Daisy, that's my cousin Tawanda beside her, my mother and the aunties who raised me, and my cousin Eddie. And so, for me, when I talk a lot about family and this idea of why it matters, I still walk around every day with those people on my back. Those
mm,
people on my back, they in my spirit. My cousin Eddie has passed. My grandmother has passed. And so for me, in all the conversation about family, gave a talk recently where I was giving a public lecture and I said social work saved my life. But when I talked about social work saved my life, I started with a picture of my family, right? So as an encouragement to anyone who's listening, especially Mikhail, to go to your question earlier about folks who may be hurt. Yes, there may be hurt. We all deal with various forms of hurt and trauma. But I can guarantee you the smartest women I ever met in my life were my parents who raised me. And my grandmama's love was the love I could never get anywhere. If I tried to bottle it, I couldn't bottle it. I couldn't get it anywhere. And it's almost kind of like when you're in different parts of the country, you miss certain foods or you miss certain things you just can't get because you know where you need to get it from. And so I think that in this day and era where certainly uh I'm sorry, y'all. We done grown up now. We are the decision makers, right? Like we are in the spots to where it's like somebody need to do something but this family thing. It's us, right? So, so I wanted to share, and I don't know who will ever see this, right? In terms of and my family's giving me approval to kind of post. I posted that on Facebook before. So I didn't embarrass anybody by showing the pictures because it's all love. I would actually get that made into a sweater and wear it around every day if I could, because to me, that's what it's all about. And so having that memory, my wife and I, we try to do whatever we can to give our boys a taste of that, but knowing that we probably won't be able to give them a full meal of how I felt on that random Sunday. But we try to do whatever we can so that, if and when, well, not if, but when our time on this earth is over, did we do our job as parents, as people who have a role to play in the story of our family, that we celebrated the whole story. So thank y'all for letting me share that. I did not want to let this conversation about family go on for a whole hour without me showing y'all some of Monk's Corner's finest. And yes, the afros was banging. All right, it was absolutely, and so I think a lot of our community swag, style, that's why I call it romantic, because we get it from any type of swag or style I might even think about having in 2023. I certainly know I got it from the ancestors and my elders who showed me how to get down.
I love it. I love
That's what's
it.
up.
Yes.
So I think that I would say resilience, and just like an overall strength and love that kind of ties all that together, you know. So we do have in our family times when we've fallen out or swept things under the rug or disagreed or forgot someone's birthday, and it really crushed us to have that experience. But the ability to forgive, and understanding what forgiveness does for yourself first, and then understanding where that takes the rest of the family. Our ability to tie love into all of that to bring us back to center, I think it's probably my favorite part. Um, it's the one place, like I said in the beginning, I think I for my immediate family, now that I'm a mother and raising kids, I want my home and our family to be their safe space, their comfort. And I think even though we have in my bigger family we have things that have come up and kind of torn the family apart or whatever, like I said, when we show up at 4th of July, somehow at Matthias Day, we sit that on the side and everybody just takes in the moment and we appreciate. And I think it really did come from pandemic, to be honest, like you said, because there was this time when we didn't see each other and it wasn't an option. And once that happened, it was like, wait a minute, let's not ever do that if we don't have to. And I love that because it's not to say that we're not going to deal with whatever, the issue is. Let's deal with that. But today, we're just going to enjoy this time together and allow it to do what we needed to do in this moment. And I really like that about us because I have been at that family that day and I know the tea. I know all the tea, so I already know what y'all got going on. And I showed up and y'all did not have that going on. And I appreciate that about us. And I appreciate that even those things that 2 years ago have been worked out. And now when we all show up, we good. I love that. I don't know. I feel like there's some level of respect, resilience, I don't know, love that's just tying it all together. And it really makes the family part still feel so good. So pushing through those moments and having a space to deal with it. I think a lot of us are in therapy and learning how to use our words and how to express emotions and things like that, and understanding that our emotions and our intention and our impact and all those things are so different, and it's allowing us to have those very needed conversations. And I think the more that my family is doing that, even on their own separately, when we come together we can feel the strength of all of that. So I would just say, I don't know, I mean, I guess it's love. I feel like that's what kind of is the main piece. There's all these other things, but love seems to be this like final little tie on or something. I'm not sure. That's how I feel.
I love it. I love it. What about you, Andrea?
Oh, I literally have love, respect, and reconciliation written down. It is love, the love that unconditional, I got you, and we're here for each other, is so important. And so, like, if you forget, you can kind of come back to, like you said, that center, that core, if things get busy and then someone's like, why don't you just call your brother? Like, oh yeah, we got that, they got us. And two other things I'm proud of from where I've come from, is that one, having difficult conversations, being able to get into stuff before it gets big, or before, in prevention of ignorance, in prevention of an unknowingness, having real conversations early on. And then my dad is like the mindfulness guru before mindfulness actually had a name. He born in the projects of Boston, and one of 8, had a mom who immigrated here and spoke German, and then her husband passed away. So a grandfather I never knew. So he was the youngest of 8 kids, and resilience and having a really like work through difficulty. You know, she had 3 jobs at one time and didn't speak a lick of English, but he took that and sort of realized that you have to appreciate the small things. You have to appreciate the moment that you're in, because you don't know about tomorrow, and you shouldn't be worrying about the past. And so he's got a more crass way of saying it, and I'll leave that off for another time. But really, I think that's something that has carried through, and, you know, making sure my kids see the sunset and appreciate it, or, you know, look at a coloring of theirs that is completely all over the place, and just looking at the beauty, and being able to really like just be excited to be holding their hand, or what have you. So those small moments, and making sure that resonates is something I'm really proud of.
I love it. Love it. Well, listen, thank you guys for joining us on the front porch today. Where can our guests follow you, subscribe? Where can they find you? Yeah, whoever wants to jump in.
I'm on all socials, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and they're all the same, LaTanya Coleman-Carter.
LaTanya, tell us the name of your book. We'll also link it too. We'll tell us the name of your book.
Thank you. So the book is called Dear Mom. Wait, that's me. It's a collection of essays, poems, and prose about parenting, you know, through the ages, the generations, and the different styles, and the things I learned. It's sort of my liberation story as a parent, I think, is how I would define it. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. John and Andrea.
I'm showing my Gen X because I had to look up my handle. Like, okay, so I'm like showing my Gen X real quick. I'm like, what is the damn handle? Okay, so you can find a brother on Twitter at Dr. as in Dr. _ Millah, Dr. Miller, because it's spelled Miller, but I got more flavor than that. Come on, y'all, Dr. Miller. All right, at Dr. _ Miller. That's where you can find me at on Twitter, and on Instagram, I'm at Millatime, MILLAHTYME 27, and that's my Instagram. And by the way, you can tell since they don't match, I don't use them that often, right? Definitely not a part of my big branding, but if you wanted to follow brothers on the socials, that's how you can find me, or the old school way on Facebook. And I'm one of a zillion John Millers on Facebook, so good luck with that. But that's my socials.
Oh, I feel like a Luddite sometimes, not using social media much either. So I am on LinkedIn, and it's Andrea, and my maiden name is Dunges, DOENGES Martin, because there are a zillion Andrea Martins, but only one Andrea Dunges. And you can email me at andrea.t.martin25@gmail.com. I love talking about anything and everything. So come find me. I'm not on social media much.
We will definitely make sure that your socials, links to the books, wherever folks can find you, we will link that into the description for the podcast. Thank you all again for coming to the front porch. You all have been a blessing to us all. I'm sure that all of the guests or all of the listeners will be taking lots of insight away from that you have shared today. So thank you very much.
Thanks for opening up the front porch. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.
Enjoyed it.
Yes.
Who's frying fish in the back? Somebody frying fish
Right?
in the back?
Can I get a plate?
Right. June bug me, and they're gonna bring the spaghetti.
We're waiting for Matthias Day on the 4th.
We are definitely.
Pull up. I will add the address in the chat. Pull up. I'm not playing.
I love it.
All right.
Thank
family.
everyone for listening.
All right,
Please
bye-bye.
share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the front porch.